Welcome to the Maple Leafs Hot Stove Podcast, episode 100, big round number. There have been different iterations. I'm not 100% sure what this 100 refers to, Anthony. I'm not sure if we've done 100 together at this point, but it looks good on paper. Episode 100. I'm Nick Ashbourne, joined as always by Anthony Petrielli. We're coming to you after 4 games of the Toronto Maple Leafs 2025-2026 season, sort of a little check-in here. Anthony, we're going to start, just kind of the big obvious question, and then we're going to let it trickle down to the smaller chunks. How do you feel about the Maple Leafs start?
Yeah, such a simple question. It's such a complicated answer. I mean, you're 4 games in, so you don't want to be dramatic to anything. Early on, I always try to view it from the lens of what's happening and how real is it, and how sustainable is it. And it's easy to get wrapped up in early results of certain things and guys, Calle Yarncroc scoring 3 goals in his first 3 games, things like that. But ultimately, you look at it and like Nylander hasn't beaten a goalie yet this year. He was second in the league in goals last year. He's at 40 plus 3 years running. So that's going to change, obviously. Matthews technically has a goal against a goalie now, but he really
The
that was
goalie wasn't
basically an
really
empty
in the
net.
frame.
Yeah. I don't know what Barron was doing on that 2-on-1 as a defender either. Like you didn't take the pass, you dove, and then you dove so poorly you couldn't even take the pass back. Like just whatever. So like Matthews really hasn't either. Tavares actually has, and that was probably his first game where he's actually looked dangerous, just beyond the goal. But you kind of go through it. It's like they haven't scored a power play goal yet, and like that's I mean Morgan Riley just somehow shot it wide on a wide open net. So you kind of look at these things and say, like they're 500. They've played, I would say, 3 not particularly good teams. They're 500. None of their top guys are really shooting much of anything. Their power play's not done a single thing. They've actually been outscored. They've been outscored on the power play through 4 games. So all in all, they're just kind of like trudging along, and it's just felt a little bit low energy to me. Like it started to pick up against Nashville. I was at the game against Detroit and Toronto. That game felt very low energy to me, though they did control play, like they dominated the Red Wings. Obviously, the game in Detroit was very not great. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of look at it and say like they haven't really settled in. The top guys haven't gotten going. I don't think they've figured out the formula that they need to play on a day-to-day basis yet. Like they kind of seem stuck, like they want to play like they did last year, but the team's different than last year. I'm not saying they're not as good, but they're different. Like you can't just sit there and say, the top line's going to score a ton. Like they should still score, but not maybe in the same way when you're going from, Mitch Marner to Easton Cowan or Maccelli or Max Domi or whoever. And obviously the power play has some growing pains, but then at the same time you're looking for your depth lines to pick up some scoring slack and make more of a contribution than we took a shift and played in a hockey game. So, yeah, it's early season kind of growing pains, and part of me is like I wish they had a tough schedule to start because they would be forced to kind of pick it up. But their schedule is pretty soft early on here with a ton of home games to boot. And I just kind of feel like they're going through the motions a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a mildly disappointing start. Like as you referenced, there's nothing doing on the power play yet. I think that's one of the legitimate concerns. Like I like to consider the start against what were the concerns going into the season. Like has anything been confirmed? Has anything been denied? And so you come into the season, there is a little bit of worry about the power play with Riley coming back to that spot. And again, like they've had successful power plays have included Riley in the past, but I think people feel like, he's less equipped to do that than Marner was, and we'll see how that settles in. And I think you were a little bit concerned of like, is Matthews going to be the fully healthy dominant guy that he needs to be? And you haven't really seen that. I mean, I know that you can look under the hood and there's a lot of shots with Matthews and shot attempts, but we could have said that last year, to be honest. And you think like, how are the new guys going to fit? Is the defense the same? Brought back the same defense. Are they going to provide a little bit more puck movement, a little bit more offense? You're hoping. There's been some of that. Riley having the big first game, obviously. He's looked good. He's looked aggressive. There's some of that there, but there's not a lot of them. Also, there's the story of them being a poor territorial team and not really controlling the play very well. And, they've been kind of middle of the pack in that, but a lot of that is to do with the fact they totally dominated the Red Wings in that area in the third game. Like that kind of warps the numbers back to average for most of this time. They're still struggling with that. So I don't think they've done much to put any fears about them to rest. At the same time, it is too early to panic in any way, shape, or form. It is early. They've only played a handful of games here. There's reason to believe that, as you mentioned, the guys at the top of this lineup are going to do better. They brought in the guys who are new to this lineup. I think that's probably where we should go next. The guys who knew the lineup, are upgrades on some of the bottom of the roster guys they've had in the past, and that hasn't really shown up too much yet, but I think it's fair to
Calle
assume that it
Yarncroc,
will.
man, 3 goals in 3 games. He's
He's
showing up.
healthy. He's healthy. He's dangerous. He's a
He's
sniper
driving
now.
the bottom six.
Bobby McMann, give him some credit, as I like to do, but like he's been better than we saw at the end of last season, where he's struggling to find the back of the net. One thing I do think is that like when we last recorded this podcast, it really felt like the Leafs had a lineup structure that made sense. And we talked a lot about Cowan, and I'm sure we're going to talk about Cowan again, but it made sense. It's like, okay, you've got the Matthews line and Domi is there. You've got the second line and McMahon is there. You've got the third line with with all the new guys, Dakota, Joshua, and Maccelli. That is an interesting two-way line. And then this fourth line that was creating some noise in the preseason. And you take Scott Laughton out of the equation, and he's not the most important player on this team by any stretch of the imagination. But the structure of it has gotten funkier in his absence, I think, than we thought it might be. And like, yeah, now you're back in Max Domi, Nick Robertson territory, which is not what you assumed you'd be seeing this season.
I'm glad you flagged this because I did want to bring this up, and I guess that could have applied to the question you asked in terms of me saying they've kind of been like going through the motions. And I don't know, maybe it's a contributing factor, maybe it's not, but throughout preseason, we kind of had this idea of what the lineup was. Like it was pretty much set into place. And then Scott Laughton gets hurt, and for some reason that made them change 3 out of the 4 lines that we all basically had come to the conclusion of what the lines were. And so I wonder how much that kind of plays a factor. Like it was just weird to me. It was weird to me that they decided that Scott Laughton being out necessitated 75% of their forward lineup to be changed around before a single game had even been played. And they clearly, like, if you're Max Domi, he's training with Auston Matthews in the summer. You saw like clips going around. He played with him a little bit and had success in past years. Like there's a sample size there. We've talked about all these things a million times. He's a little bit nicked up going into camp, and then like basically doesn't get any time there other than one preseason game, but it still kind of feels like he's going to play there. And then they're like, well, actually Scott Laughton gets hurt. You're playing center again. Like that's weird to me. And you kind of go through it. It's like the whole lineup, right? Like if you're like Nick Waugh was going to play with Maccelli, and you're like, Maccelli adds like the creative offensive juice to that group. And like, you know, he started the season with what? Lorentz and Calle Yarncroc? And you're going, well, that wasn't the plan. Like it just a little bit, like it was weird. Like I just feel like everything is a little bit disjointed. Like the lines need to settle in, line mates need to settle in. And, like we're joking about Yarncroc, but like it makes sense that he's coming off on a good start because one, he actually took preseason seriously. Like he cared, like it mattered, like he needed to make the team, and he was good in preseason, and he's come out hot and ready to go. And then you look at, and I don't know how much of this a factor is, but you look at William Nylander. He was he couldn't care less about preseason. And in some ways, I respect it. He's like a 10-year veteran in the league. He's making $11.5 million. Like, is he going to sit there and say, I'm trying in preseason? No. He's like, I just don't want to get hurt. Fair enough. But now he started the way that he started. And I know that, what is he, 7 points?
Yeah,
What did you call it before we started recording? The worst 7 points in 4 games in like the history of the league? Like a bunch of empty net points. He was good against Nashville. I don't want to take that
for
away from
sure.
him.
Like
He was,
he
he
did
was.
pick it up against Nashville, but yeah, generally
Yeah,
speaking, I'm a Willie defender, but it is,
yeah.
yeah, it's just been a bad start for him.
But how much are you watching some of these guys? Like, well, like you didn't take preseason seriously, and like now you've come out like, and that's not always the case, right? Like Nick Robertson was good in preseason. Obviously, that hasn't translated. So I'm not. It's never one size fits all. I don't know. There just feels like a bunch of like weird things where everything kind of needs to like settle down. It's like you've like kicked around the lineup to what I would argue is a bizarre degree, and guys are coming like out of preseason full of cobwebs still, and I find it's stunning to me, and this could be like a whole episode in and of itself, but like what the Leafs have 8 power plays in 4 games, like that's brutal. And like every year the Leafs are good. They've been good every year under Auston Matthews, and they haven't had a single year where they're in the top half of the league. Like I'm not talking top 10. I'm talking top 16 in power plays. That's insane to me. That's absolutely insane. Like the statistical likelihood of that has to be basically zero. Like if you ask someone to simulate a hockey team being really good in the regular season for essentially a decade with a Hart Trophy winner, guys that are lighting it up all the time, they're basically top 5 in goals or top 10 in goals essentially that entire time as well. And you're like, but actually they can't draw power plays. The likelihood of that is like essentially zero. It's just like a bizarre, I don't know.
I mean that part of it is brutal, but that's consistent, right? Like that's not new, and that's not to say that it isn't funky because it definitely is, and it's been a thing that's been going on for years. But like that, I don't attribute anything about their start to that because if anything, the power play hasn't been effective. Now, if they'd gotten 11 or 12 opportunities instead of
But
8, maybe there's a world where they get a couple goals there and they
in
get
terms of the
going.
game flow, though, it changes the game flow and guys getting touches and guys getting it. I actually, other than Montreal, I actually think their power plays looked good and dangerous. They just haven't buried.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. You could, again, I'm really hesitant to go too far under the hood with the power play in terms of believing that the underlying numbers mean something because it is such a small sample. Like they are not getting a ton of shots or attempts. But again, it is 8 power plays. Like you could have that in one crazy game. Like it's
They're
not.
like they're like two weeks of William Nylander deciding to shoot the puck away from
Yeah, and
all of those
Nylander
numbers
not
changing.
getting shots and attempts is probably the one thing to flag so far and on the power play. But I also think, like, speaking of that kind of lineup shuffle and how it's affected, like, think about how many guys have taken a demotion, right? Max Domi, demoted. Nick Waugh, demoted. Dakota Joshua, demoted. Matias Maccelli, like, you could argue at times, demoted. Like,
Bobby McMahon.
the Bobby Man, the only guy who has been sort of a beneficiary of this shakeup or feels like has been significantly has been Easton Cowan in recent games because he's shot up to the first line, but it does feel like it's this weird shakeup where not many people probably feel like they are personally benefiting from it. And like whenever the lineup moves, there are winners and losers, but often there's approximately the same number of winners and losers. And for whatever reason, the shape of this is odd such that there are more losers than win. And it doesn't mean that this lineup is going to be ineffective, but it does mean just from a, I don't know, morale standpoint, for lack of a better term, like there, it's not great for some of these guys. Like, Waugh is not playing as nearly as many minutes as he would have expected to play. And, Maccelli has not been getting a lot of minutes in recent games, even though he's playing up on that line. And it just, that aspect of it is hard to kind of put your finger on how much it matters, but there's a level to which like there are probably a couple of guys who aren't super happy with how this is going.
Yeah, and there's probably a few guys that shouldn't be super happy with how they're playing either. I just Yeah, I feel like the whole thing kind of needs to just settle in. I think the coaching staff is kind of booting around the lineup a little bit too much and in like bizarre and like unexplainable ways where you're kind of like, I don't know why you're running it this way, so to speak. Even like you mentioned like Nick Watts, like you're closing out games, you can't move him up on right wing with Matthews and Nyes. Like he used to do that in Vegas all the time. Like he was playing 15 minutes a night on good Vegas teams pretty much through the meat of his career so far. And you're telling me like on this Leafs team he can't even play 13? That just like the it doesn't like some of it just goes towards this idea of they need to figure out the roster a little bit and like I get it with Scott Laughton losing a center's tough. Like having to replace the center is always tough. There's only four of them. It's not as interchangeable. But the domino effect has probably been a little bit more significant than I would have expected. And then so all that to say is it just they're a little bit tough to evaluate right now given that. But I still look at them. I know they lost to Detroit twice in regulation, which is brutal. But I don't look at that Detroit team and say they're better than the Leafs. I wasn't watching
No.
going,
And
wow,
the
Detroit closed
second
the
game
gap on
against
these
Detroit,
guys.
like those first two periods in particular, like they controlled that game. They looked very impressive. They end up losing that game on account of a bounce that goes right to the guy. And it's not perfect, but Matthews like blocks that shot. It hits his foot and then his stick or whatever, and it's just the perfect place
Yeah.
for a shot. Like that's the kind of shit that happens. And like I don't think
Even
they should feel particularly bad about that game.
even the first time they played them, I mean, look, they weren't good. I'm not defending the second and third period. I didn't think they were great in the first period either, but I know from the human nature standpoint of it, of you're playing a team, you're like, we're better than these guys, which I think they are. And then they're up 2-0. They're up 2 rip in pretty quick order. And they're like, all right, this is a joke. And then they played like it the rest of the way, which is inexcusable, especially for a veteran team and a veteran defense. Like close it out kind of thing. But you could kind of see the way it was playing where they're like, all right, we won the first game. The second game we're up 2-0. These guys stink. And then they played like that and obviously they lost the game. And then the next game they're like, all right, like we're gonna put our foot down. And they did, and then they still didn't win, but like to me that was more like they proved a point of like okay, like we like you guys won't leave your zone. Like I listened to the Detroit post game after like they knew. Let's put it that way. You go back, you listen to like what McClellan stuff was saying. He's like, I'm happy they didn't quit, but like basically like they destroyed us. And then the Nashville game, I know what the I know that they were technically out attempted in that game, but the Leafs carried the scoring chances, and that one like it felt like any time the Leafs actually needed to do anything, they were easily capable of doing it. Like Nashville ties the game 2-2. Berube calls the timeout, and it felt very much. And I rewatched the game again before we recorded this, and it was very much like, okay, let's go back to work. And they did. And that game was really not in doubt, I don't think, at any point. So you kind of look and you're like they should have won the one game against Detroit. They shouldn't have pissed around a 2-0 lead the one game. I thought they outclassed Nashville. And I thought the Montreal game just looked like a standard Leaf win from last year. Like they were slightly outpossessed territorially. They scored once they had to defend. Montreal had nothing. I think Montreal had like 6 shots on net in the third period. Like they didn't even come close in the third. Like it was not even competitive. And so, yeah, like a bit of a work in progress with the lines. I don't like I'm not down on them in any way. I think they need to figure out their lineup a little bit more here.
Yeah, I mean, I think a bounce differently in one of those Detroit games, and it ends up being a different conversation. I also, to be fair, don't get the impression that people are panicking out there either. Like, I think people are like, this could have
Eh,
been better." But I mean,
They're not panicking right now because they beat Nashville yesterday. But if
yeah,
they lost
okay.
to Nashville, people be panicking.
Fair, but also as you said, like yes, in terms of if you want to do like raw attempts, that game was close. But if you look at the shot chart for that game, like Nashville has thrown a lot of junk at the net
Chunk.
from places that
Absolute
were
chunk.
not dangerous, and the Leafs were able to get to spots that were. And it is that was very much one of those games where those type of stats did not tell the story of the game.
No, and the only thing I'll give
And some of
Nashville
the junk went in, to be
is
fair.
Caden Primo was in net, so I don't blame them. I definitely felt it, right? Like it's one game. I guess at this point you're expecting Wall to miss like basically the month. I mean, we're halfway through the month. Even if he returns, let's call it tomorrow, he's going to need a week or two to ramp up. Like it's not like he just puts his equipment on and, you know, he the pads are on, he's good to go. Like he's going to take some time. So, like mentally, I've been bracing for this. Like they're going to have someone play like 3 games or whatever this month. But watching it actually happen, it was like, okay, like when's this guy coming back? Because this is important and this matters. And we talked about it a ton the last episode. We don't need to go through it again. Um, but one like side note that I did want to discuss from these games because it's actually been very bothersome to me is the just the lack of response from this team to guys getting punked. I cannot believe it. Like and so what I'm referring to is like Weissblatt like throwing Cowan into the post. I'm talking about Edmondson like standing over Nyes and like giving him the business. It dated back to preseason. We talked about it when Laurent Tefon ran into Stolars. Like these are guys, like those are events that are happening in which guys should be gunning into a pile, swinging and throwing bombs. Like I'm sorry, like there's no like nice way to say it's not like oh like make sure you have words for it. It's like Cowan gets thrown into the net. He's 20. And like Nyes didn't see it fair enough on the initial play. He had to have known it happened after. Like he could have addressed it the next shift. Like, did anyone go by that guy on the bench? Said like the next time you touch the ice, like you're fighting? No. Like Matthews was calling for a penalty. He did like he looked like the dog pissing on the proverbial fire hydrant with like the leg up, doing the rounding of the event with like his hand half up. Like, are we getting a power play? It's like, who cares, man? It's game 4. He's 20. He got ran. Like it's a cheap shot. Like it's a garbage play. Someone should have absolutely put their stick through his face at a minimum. I know Tanev went over and like had some gentle words for him. Tanev's 35. I can like maybe give it a bit of a break on his end. At least he went over kind of thing. But
Yeah, I don't think you want Tanev in the meat of those confrontations, realistically.
honestly, I think if Tanev goes over as a respected vet and cross checks him in the face, I don't really know how much retribution Tanev is going to get for that. But it also pisses me off that we would sit here and think, well, yeah, if Tanev did something dirty, Nashville would probably respond to that. It's like, well, why didn't the Leafs respond? Like, they sit there and they're like, we're the heaviest team in the league. Trey did a great job changing the DNA. And like, I don't know. Those are the moments to me where it's like someone should have fed this guy. I'm sorry. Like, there's no like, I don't know how anyone in their right mind could defend watching that. Like, I don't know how you could. I don't know how you could sit there with a straight face and say that's acceptable behavior. Like, how
This
many years are we into this, Nick? How
this
many
is the
years?
sort of thing that I mean, first of all, like it is interesting that when people talk about reforming the DNA, like sure, I guess, Dakota Josh was a tougher
What
player, but like
what
they didn't
DNA has changed?
the reality is the top of the lineup is the same guys. It's all you did was remove one of them, and you removed one guy who's not going to be in the mix, but that's where most of the stuff comes from. Like it comes from the top of the lineup. Like you referred to what Matthews did. If someone didn't watch the game and that was the first they'd heard of it, I don't think they would be very surprised. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, that sounds like the sort of thing that Auston Matthews would do." And you flagged the fact that this is the heaviest team in the league, and like, what are they getting for that? And, there is, in theory, there's like, an offensive advantage around the net, or you're clearing the net, and maybe their defense uses a size. But when I watch this team, I definitely don't think like, oh, this is a big, tough team. Like everyone
No.
who has watched hockey for an extended period of time has watched a team, usually not the Leafs, who the Leafs are playing. You're like, holy shit, like that is a bunch of mutants out there. Like, what do you do about the size, the strength, the power? Like, even putting aside the extracurriculars, like just the presence of a team that is in theory the biggest team in the league, like it doesn't really feel like the Leafs have presence, or they have aura, if that's the correct Gen Z terminology. Like they don't have anything really to show for the bulk that they seem to prefer, that Treliving and Berube seem to prefer. Like occasionally you're gonna get a Matthew Nyes goal out of that. Occasionally you're gonna get a net front nicely cleared out of that. But it doesn't feel like they are taking that premise as far as they would want it to go, because that does feel like a big part of their branding, or at least Treliving and Berube's branding is like this team is trying to be big and tough and hard to play against. And I don't really get that impression. I don't get that impression that the Leafs opponents feel that way about them.
No. And it's not like they do anything to send some sort of message to other teams that says like if you do this, like there's going to be a price to pay. You know, Cowan takes a shot towards the end of the Detroit game, right? Like in front of the net with like 15 seconds left or something. Was it Sherratt? It was Sherratt was in and
Yeah.
around it. If To me, that should have been a borderline melee. Like I would have been okay if they had lost the game. Like if they said like this game's over, but like that's unacceptable. And they took a bunch of penalties. Like I wouldn't have cared. Like they didn't come back anyway. There's 15 seconds left. It just, you know, you can't have guys taking liberties. It's like someone in the comments mentioned like Wyatt Johnson in relation to Easton Cowan. Like Wyatt Johnson went right to the NHL. He had like 41 points that year, and he's obviously ascended every little bit since. But I was sitting there going, well, Wyatt Johnson played with Jamie Benn, and Jamie Benn is like a little nuts. Like in a good, lovable way. Like that's the kind of guy I think every single team wants to have a player like Jamie Benn. And like if you were taking liberties with Wyatt Johnson in front of Jamie Benn's face, like you're fighting, like someone's like stepping in, and it's like I look. I think the argument a lot of people have is like, well, do you want Auston Matthews like stepping in and like fighting? It's like, no, I don't want Auston Matthews stepping in and fighting. But like, I'll take him cross-checking a guy to the face, and if he gets suspended for a couple games to prove a point, yeah, I would actually be okay with that, and not everyone listening is going to be, and I get that. You say, well, you don't want Matthews missing for 2 games. Like, I don't care. I don't want guys taking liberties with Easton Cowan every single night. Like he's a couple games in, and it's happened both nights where guys have just thought that they can just do whatever, and they've thought right because no one's done anything to them. And yeah, I don't know. Like that really bothers me. It bothers me that it doesn't seem to even be on Craig Berube's radar. And look, I'm talking about Auston Matthews, but like it's just like the whole bench was watching. We all know that they have iPads there that they're constantly tinkering with. It's like Dakota Joshua couldn't have sat there and said, like, I really haven't done much in 4 games. Like maybe I should go out there and someone should pay a price for hitting a 20-year-old. Like tons of guys, like you don't have to do it right even in the moment. Like someone could have been like, no, any which time in the remaining like 8 minutes of the game. And like no one seemed to even have a second thought about it. And I don't know, it's kind of like the same conversation every year. You're gonna have a certain group that says like, who cares? Like none of this stuff matters. To me, it matters. I don't know how you've watched the past 8 years and said like, yeah, it's cool. Like guys just get like cheap shot all the time and like no one's done anything basically throughout this era of the team and like that's acceptable behavior and hey, the proof is in the pudding when the chips are down. Like they clearly come out to play. I don't know. I don't think these are events that were they happening to like some of the other teams that they talk about. Like they've talked a lot about emulating like Tampa, like probably not going to Florida's level, but Tampa's level. I don't know. I watched Tampa and I'm like, I think if they had a 20-year-old playing on the top line and someone threw that guy into the post, he's getting jumped. Like, have we not been watching Tampa the past few years? Did we not watch Tampa in the preseason?
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm
it's
just
it's interesting because like I think I probably would have positioned myself fairly far to the other end of that spectrum. I don't know, 5 years ago, something like that. Like if you rewind 5 years and it was at a point where the Leafs' failure to ascend in the playoffs could still to some degree be attributed to random variation, bad luck, a John Tavares injury here, and the fact that it kept happening over the years, and the fact that seeing what Florida has done, like that has moved me closer and closer and closer into your camp, like to the point that yeah, it does feel like it matters that this team rarely, and whether there are going to be different constituencies who want to fight or want a big open ice hit from Jake McCabe or whatever they want to cross check, and like we can debate what is the correct level of policing. And I think sometimes people get really into the weeds with that, and like I don't know, maybe even you and I wouldn't agree on exactly what it should look like, but it should be something, and it hasn't been anything. And Cowan is they are positioning him as an important player on this team. And like he is 20. He's not like freakishly small or anything. It's not like he'll never be able to take care of himself. But as you mentioned, like this is a guy with no pro experience, a guy who, again, he's like the top prospect. And he's not the franchise in the way that some other guys' top prospects
no.
are. But he's important to the team, and they are sending that message by giving him the role that they're giving him and having the faith that they have in him. And like even just in terms of his on ice success, like putting him in a position to succeed involves having him probably feel like there's a level of security for him that and I don't think every single night means that one of these incidents is going to happen. I don't think this is going to be some crazy pattern like the league is on some conspiracy to hunt down Easton
Well,
Cowan.
I don't know. What does it take for a response? It could like if it happened
But
10 straight games, when does it stop,
Well,
Nick?
yeah, I
Does
think
like
if it
who
happens
do
10
anything?
straight games, then maybe we can get the tinfoil hats out. I don't think the
We're
world is
we're at
necessarily.
two. We're at
We're
two
at
and
two, and
counting.
that's fine. We'll see how
Two for
far it
two.
goes. But
I,
it's yeah, like Cowan's a really important player for what they're doing, and it's legitimately going to affect how much success he can have if things like this happen and there isn't response and there isn't deterrent to these things continuing to happen, regardless of exactly how frequent this pattern repeats.
you gotta wonder a little bit. Not the like. I mean, it does matter a little. It does matter, but like, it's not the be all and end all. But like, Easton Cowan came from London. Like, they're traditionally they didn't have like a classic heavyweight last year. Landon Sim, who's also with the Leafs, who I also kind of like, led them in penalty minutes last season. But like by and large, the Hunters have had, like an enforcer, some quote unquote guy that's gonna like step in and stand on business when appropriate. It's like the year before, like they had Max McHugh. Like Max McHugh played in the A last year. He had 122 penalty minutes in 46 games. Like there's some dirt, and like the Hunters have some dirt to them. And so you're kind of coming from that program whereby if that thing happened to Easton Cowan last year, the year before that, a response would have happened. Rest assured. So it's probably got to be a little bit, I don't know. I mean, he's never going to say it publicly, but I got to imagine in his mind, he's kind of like, what the hell's going on here?
I
Like,
think he'll probably trade it for playing on the first line with the
yeah, I
Leafs
mean,
right
what's
now.
he
I
gonna
think
look
like
at those guys and be like, I don't want to play with you? Of course not. But like in his
broadly
mind,
speaking,
he's
his life's going all right. But yeah,
yeah, but
no, I
but
know
he's
what you
got to
mean.
be sitting there like this is a bit weird. Like no one's like, where is everybody? I just, you know, which I guess, look, we can belabor it forever. To transition to it, Easton Cowan in general, I think it's been a good first few games for him. It's 2 games, it's early. I think he struggled a bit breaking out, which is what you would expect from any rookie, let alone one playing on his off wing. I think everything from like center ice down has been good so far. It's interesting because when we had last recorded, the thing we didn't like is like, well, this guy's getting like, it's like fourth line. You're playing with Steven Lorentz. No offense to Steven Lorentz. Like, is he going to be in the lineup every night? Like, you're taking out experienced vets. And then, like, suddenly Lorentz gets hurt and Lauden's hurt. And now he's up the lineup. And that's kind of made things a little bit more interesting. Like, in between our two recordings, I did write about it a little bit, and I'd mentioned as part of the writing, because I did sit there for a little bit and go, okay, well, in what event is it acceptable for him to be on the lineup? Because, like, I don't know if the answer is just like an unequivocal, like, absolutely not. So, the thing that I kind of looked at when you look at some of the other younger players, which includes Matthew Nyes, is like, where does that ice time have to be? And to me, it has to be at least 13 plus minutes. Like you got to be right in that 13, 14-minute range. That's where a lot of like young guys like Craig Berube talked about Sean Couturier and Robert Thomas, like two young guys he had. Both those guys were like 13, 14 minutes. Matthew Nyes was like 13 and a half minutes, like moved up to the top line. Like we talked about that. But suddenly Cowan's playing on the top line. So like you look at 2 games, both games, 14:05. And like suddenly, like it's a little bit more interesting. Like that's a good sweet spot for me. Like I don't have an issue with him being up when it's like you're gonna play with good players. We're not gonna like screw you around on the fourth line. And you're also playing notable minutes, like 14 minutes, like you can develop in that and within that. And so look, like at some point, like it sounds like Lorentz could have played last game. Scott Laughton, like they never put him on LTIR, which means he's going to be back sooner than later. He could be back next week for all we know. And how all of that is going to get reworked when it happens, I don't know. Like if you, I've been sitting in the morning in preparation of this podcast going like, what would I do with the lines if everybody was fully healthy by Saturday? And I don't know what the answer is. I'm like, I would wait till Thursday with one eye open and like see how it goes kind of thing. But all of that to say is this if this is kind of the what we're going to see a little bit more consistently up until he eventually falters, which I'm sure will happen as most young guys do. Um, like I can see a development path here where he's playing enough, he's playing with good players, he's contributing offensively, but we need to see him play against some actual good hockey teams. Like playing against Detroit without Lucas Raymond for half the game and playing against that Nashville team who I thought looked terrible. It is it's not quite Jake Gensel, Braden Point, and Nikita Kucherov, or Barkov for Hagee and Reinhart, or even Ottawa's top line if when Brady Tkachuk is there and not out for the next month. Like we haven't seen like an actual test to me. Like he hasn't actually gone up against a proper like good line.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like it is 2 games. I think the ice time is about right. They've been able to tinker with that line situationally, right? Like you can throw Nylander on that line in a big offensive zone face-off if you're protecting a lead late in the game. And it's not to say that Cowan is sort of brutally defensively irresponsible, but you can throw Yarncroc on there for a shift or something like that. So like that takes a little bit of pressure off that there are certain situations where you can be like, we're going to ease off the gas here. And so he's not going to get first line minutes, even if he's playing primarily on the first line. I mean, it is kind of interesting to me how much Berube seems to just love him. Like a lot of times in the beginning, I don't know, beginning of like hockey analytics coming in, like there's a lot of people talking about watching hockey and confirmation bias, where it's like if you believe a thing and you watch a game, hockey is ambiguous enough that you can kind of take your belief and carry it forward. And I like again, I don't think Cowan has been bad at all. And I'm encouraged by what I've seen so far, but I feel like Craig Berube's got that confirmation bias for him. He's got the rose-colored glasses where like if he does well, he's gonna approve of it. And if he's doing okay, like it just seems to be enough. Like he'll say positive things about him, it seems like, even if he's not overwhelming and how successful he is. I still don't think this is going to be a long-term thing. As you mentioned, like those veteran players are coming back. He has not really been tested against in these really difficult situations. And there's going to be a bit of a roster crunch. There's a chance he can't really keep up longer term, but it's a hell of an opportunity for him. It's fun to watch. I think that as like conceptually speaking, and we don't have to mention Marner too much, trying to mention Marner less and less as we go down this road. But like when you think about
First
the
of all,
mat,
that's he who must not be named. If
yeah,
don't say the
yeah.
name.
Anyway, but like in the pre Marner era with Matthews, it was Matthews, Hyman, and Connor Brown you saw a lot of. And, obviously Nyes is not Hyman, like he's not a pure equivalent, but he's a bit of, there's a bit of that guy in him. And then Connor Brown was kind of like the smart guy with a little bit of skill and a little bit of grit who could do a little bit of everything. And Cowan can do some of that. And that was a very success like people kind of forget how Matthews was scoring 40 goals from the beginning. Like he was having that level of success from the rip, and it wasn't necessarily with Marner. And so like I think conceptually this line can work. I don't want to spend forever on it because, as you said, it just feels like there's a lot of different ways that it can be pulled apart, and I'd be surprised if it's a long-term venture. But I don't know if I end up being surprised and this is a thing that continues for an extended period of time. It will it'll just add intrigue, I think, to a line that obviously we're all going to be watching closely.
I have thought a few things. One, like we kind of talked about the early season slog. Like this is a veteran team. They kind of look a bit to me like they're going through the motions. And so, in saying that, to your point about like it's fun, that's some of the benefit of having a 20-year-old and he's fresh faced and everything is new and exciting to him. And like it's nice to have that injection of youth, right? Their defense is old. They're all like they all played together last year. They're old in net with Stolar, not old, but like, like he's a 30 plus year old veteran. Most of their forwards have been around the block. Like there's not a lot of new and exciting. So having that in October is good. Uh, like it's just you want that little bit of the mid, you hear like mid-season slog. To me, like this is like early season slog because that's what happens when you have veterans. When you have the middle of the season and all these guys like really have their legs under them properly and they're rolling, I would expect them to be a lot more business. So I think that that's good. I also think it's some of the stuff for, like production and like how it's going to work long term. I like Cowan. I think he's going to be a good player. Like none of this is like to begrudge him. But like literally starting tomorrow or today, whenever you're listening to it, or the weekend, whatever day you're listening to this, if you were to put Max Domi on right wing with Matthews and Nyes for the rest of the season, or you were to keep Cowan there for the rest of the season, like I'm not convinced Cowan outproduces Domi in that spot.
No,
Like,
I'd take Domi over Cowan in terms
like
of, especially if you want to go like raw production for sure.
yeah, raw production. Yeah, other things maybe not, but like raw production. So to some of it, it's like, well, yeah, like he's shown like he can be productive in that spot. I'm like, I don't actually know if he's shown that at all. Like I think we're 2 games in.
He hasn't shown
They,
really anything other
yeah,
than some subjective
they,
stuff,
yeah,
realistically.
they haven't played that well. Like I know, or sorry, they haven't played many good teams or any good teams with Calvin yet. And like part of that too is like Matthews is starting to like Matthews had 8 shots on net his first game. And I know Cowan contributed to that. It's not to say that he did it and Cowan was a pure spectator because he wasn't. But Matthews picked it up. That was the first time to me this year where he's actually looked to kind of assert himself. And so, as always, like a lot of guys will look good in that spot if Matthews and Nyes play well. Like that's kind of what it comes down to. Like Maccelli must have been watching that second Detroit game going, where was this guy when I played on that line. Like, how is this my fault? I actually felt bad for Maccelli against Nashville because he should have had like 4 points that game,
Oh
and he
yeah.
had zero. Like, it was cruel and unusual. It was like the own
That's the
goal
life of
tip
a
in.
playmaker though, right? Like you're living relying on other people to finish get the
But
job
like he
done.
should have had a goal and it gets tipped into their net. He's
Yeah.
probably says like I could have tipped that in, just leave it. It's like that sucks. And like he doesn't pick up a point on the Tavares goal in front, but he was a significant player in the lead up to that. And like Ekman Larson was good. Like that's a nice touch pass to Nylander. Nylander was obviously good, but like Maccelli helped drive that forward. It's like he found Robertson in the slot, hits the post, found Nylander in the slot, shot it like 2 feet wide. It's like found Benoit back door. I was like, ah,
Okay, come on. You can't
that's
expect the
no,
point to come.
I mean, the pass was
It's
unbelievable. It
nice.
just was unfortunate who was on the receiving end of it. I was like, well, too bad Ekman Larsson's not playing on the left. That would have been a free goal. So, and then Ekman Larsson scores anyways, and Maccelli doesn't get any credit. I was like, that's a frustrating night for him. Like, you're sitting there going, man, like, we won, like, awesome. I should have 4 points tonight.
Es-
Like,
Especially against Nashville. You're like, this is a team where you're thinking of having some sets. I found myself surprisingly I go in as a bit of a pro Maccelli person. Like I just like the skill set he brings to the team. I thought it was a good gamble on him. But when I think of sort of the platonic ideal of that Nylander Tavares line in recent years, like I think of it with Bertuzzi and Tavares and
Pacioretty,
how well they worked together kind of down on the boards and stuff, and then having Nylander on the perimeter. And obviously, Maccelli doesn't really give you that in the same way. But I do like what he gives you, and I don't think that I think he can work with those guys. I don't know if that's the long term thing. I still like McMann up there. I like McMann and Nylander and the speed that they bring as a duo. I think they got good options for a second line for all the questions about the first line and the uncertainty there. Presuming you keep that Nylander and Tavares duo together, it does feel to me like there are, if Dakota Joshua wakes up at some point, like you could throw him up there for a couple games and see what happens, and maybe he can do some stuff. Like it just does feel like that line is going to be okay because there are multiple ways it can go, and all of them make sense conceptually.
I was trying to think, have we ever seen like who's the closest line mate we've seen Nylander have that resembles Maccelli? And the only one I could really come up with, other than like the ridiculous games where he would like, I don't know, take shifts with like Nick Baton or something like that in like the classic Dubas era, like the real heart of the Dubas era. Like that nonsense aside, like the only guy I could come up with is like Andreas Janssen. And it like if you remember the year that they fired Babcock, Nylander started with Matthews, which is also, player wine, whatever. Anyways, Nylander was with Matthews, and it was Andreas Janssen on the other side, and that was their only good line for like that 2 month, like the final 2 months of the Babcock era. That was their only good line, and like you look at that line conceptually, like, well, who's gonna forecheck? But they figured it out, and they were really good. And look, I'm not sold on Maccelli, Tavares, Nylander by any stretch of the imagination. Like, I'll need to see that for 20 plus games and against like good teams and so on and so forth before I really trust it. But I will say it was nice to see Nylander have someone to snap the puck around with. Because like Bertuzzi couldn't make a pass. Like he could barely skate in a straight line without falling on his own feet. I liked him because he was chaotic and he went to the net and like he mucked it up. And I liked him for that. But like him and Nylander aren't making plays to each other. That just
Not
was
in that
never
like
that was never on the
Bertuzzi's a
table.
decent short area passer, and he has some nifty stuff like in and around the dangerous areas. Like I actually give him some credit, but like the Maccelli's different. Maccelli, like you're talking cross ice, you're
Like,
talking
yeah.
transitional work. Like that's he's got some
Yeah.
vision. Like
Like when he found Nylander in the slot and he shot it like multiple feet wide, and then after Mike Johnson was kind of like that's like a crazy like miss for Nylander. Like to miss like that far when you're him is like wild. And they kind of like showed Nylander and it almost looked like he was he was kind of like smiling a little bit, like kind of like looked at Maccelli, like giving him this look like, shit, like I haven't received a pass like that in a long time. Like it was kind of funny to me watching them play out. So I don't know, like you'll need to see it for a really long stretch of play to feel good about it because you're gonna sit there and say, are these guys gonna be terrible in D zone? A very fair thing to think. Are they gonna be able to forecheck enough and get the puck? Very fair thing to think as well. But also when they do have the puck, like once they actually have it, it's exciting. Like they're just another guy that can move it and make a play. And I felt like that with Maccelli when he was with Matthew. Like the Saturday game against Detroit, the only like the best chances that line had was because of Maccelli. Like he set up a number of chances and those guys didn't bury. And then he's got to watch Matthews actually like look to dictate play the next game immediately after he's off his line. And I was like, I don't know if this is like a Phil Kessel, Nazem Kadri, like we don't actually play together situation or what the deal is there. It's 2 games in, who knows? Um, and for if you're a golf fan, Matthews comparing Maccelli to Patrick Cantley was not a like that's not a good sign. Um,
I'm a total golf atheist. I had no idea what
yeah,
that reference
yeah.
refers to.
Just how long Cantley takes to play, like a
Mm.
million practice swings. It just if you golf, like pace of play is important, and Cantley doesn't have it, and it just pisses guys off. And so when Matthews was like, he's kind of like Patrick Cantley, I was like, oh, that's that's insulting. So all that I don't know. I'm just like I'm primarily joking for listeners. I'm not taking that one seriously. But like all that say is just I think Machelli's been creative and offensive, and like I see why they like him. Other new guys, like we've talked a little bit about Joshua, like I mean, he hasn't been good. There's not much to
Been
say.
a non-factor,
The,
realistically.
the crazy thing for Joshua to me is he's from Michigan and they played in Detroit on the Saturday. And I think they said like he had like 20 people there or something. And I'm sitting there going, holy cow, I don't want to see how you play when nobody in your family's in the building because you had that many people there and that was the performance you put in. That that's not good. So he just hasn't really been there yet. You see the odd cycle or ability to create a turnover on the forecheck. I do think he's a good penalty killer, which matters. Like he's been good. I've liked their penalty kill in general so far. I think it's looked organized and actually ready to go. It as a unit, it's probably been the best thing about their team so far, my estimation. But beyond that, like he's again, why isn't he targeting someone on Nashville after what happened to Cowan? Like that's part of his role, whether he wants to admit it or not. That's part of his role.
Yeah, I mean, there's just, there's nothing you can point to and you say, okay, he's doing this really well. Like it's about starring in your role, right? Like, and he may never, like, he may never get top 6 shifts. I mean, at some point, maybe they will just to give it a different look because sometimes you see that happen with his size. Guys get a chance, but like his role right now is very complimentary. He's not being asked to do very much and he's still coming in under that bar. And this is 4 games and he's a new player and he's adjusting. So I don't want to be like, this is me going on a rant about how shit Dakota Joshua has been. Like I'll leave that to somebody else. But I'll just say that like the bar hasn't been high for what he needs to do in a pretty limited role with this lineup shakeup, and he's just not really giving you much.
I'd also say like he's coming off a down year, and we all know the backstory to that. I'm sure was a significant factor, and so on and so forth. But he's also not established enough and coming off a good year. Any positives you want to say to justify kind of coming out slow? Like I think Nick Waugh has been better than Joshua, not by a ton, but he's been better. But Nick Waugh actually has like proper tenure in the league. And he's not coming off like a terrible year by any means. Maybe not his best year, but he's not coming off like a garbage year. like there's a lot more there. Like he could kind of get into as like Joshua should come in for like they gave you away, man. They gave you away. They signed you to a deal. They saw you for a year into that deal. You battled a sickness, like, and they were like, no, we don't want this guy. Like he should be frothing at the mouth the way he's coming in. And it hasn't been there at all. Whereas Wall, I'm like, you can see the things that we flagged all summer of which you would like for like a big right-handed center actually knows how to play center properly. You can see the puck protection at times. Like he's got enough to him to make some plays with the puck. I do think he's been lost a little bit in coverage at times. I don't know if that's just changing of the system or he's just completely out to lunch. Um, Obviously the game in Detroit, like he was on for 3 goals against in the in the second period. Like that's bad. Uh, but by and large, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be happy with Waugh. I kind of been watching him a little bit, going, I wouldn't mind again, like we talked about this in the summer. It's like I would like to see you with Scott Lawton. I'd like to see you guys together, maybe interchange like some center duties depending on like where the face off is or whatever. And but by and large, I'm like, he's fine. Like he's going to be solid for what they need him to be. And then you got, I don't know if you have any further thoughts on Waugh.
Yeah, I think what you see with Waugh so far is, as you mentioned, the characteristics that you knew you were going to get coming in. And yeah, it is not some hot start for him. He has not really flashed offensively, but at the same time, he hasn't been winning faceoffs. That is a known issue with him, but not a hot start in that regard. I just find it too, the fact that his role has been minimized, the fact he's getting so little ice time. And I know it's just like a couple minutes difference at the end of the day, but I find it hard to judge him too much. I thought that he was going to get that third line locked in role, and that he was going to get at least one kind of quasi creative winger on his ending, whether it was Maccelli or whether it was going to be Easton Cowan earning his way out. Like I thought that he was going to have an opportunity to be around that offensive creation, and that maybe that would help him kind of use his size and kind of remind people that he is someone who has produced a little bit offensively in the league. And he's been kind of stapled to Joshua, who's been struggling, and he hasn't had that creation around him. And so I find it difficult to judge him harshly at this point. Clearly, he could have been doing more, but he hasn't been dealt a great hand, and he hasn't done anything to supplant that bad situation. He has been put in a tough situation, and he's kind of just lived in it.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, Lawton. Lawton would be a better line mate than anyone he's played with so far. Maccelli, who we thought he was playing with to start the year, would be better than anyone he's played with so far. I would be interested in seeing him with Bobby McMann for an extended look. I know he's taken some odd shifts here and there with Nylander, but that's not really the same as like this is your line mate for the day or the week or the month. So, yeah, I mean, I'm no less optimistic on Waugh. I like him. I think he's a good ad. I like having a versatile right-handed forward with size that can do a little bit of everything across the board in the mix. And they just got to kind of sort out where he's going to fit. So, yeah, and then I look at I don't know if we want to go through like every single forward, probably not. Like again, what are you going to say about Nylander that we haven't said? The one thing I'll say about Matthews is he's probably had about like I don't know, 5 or 6 looks against a goalie where 2 years ago it would have been automatic, 3 years ago it would have been automatic, and now it's not automatic. And I don't really know how I feel about that. I don't know if that's just like a beginning of the season, like nothing burger. I just, this guy used to get a clean look on a goalie and the net might as well have been empty. And now he gets chances and I'm like shrugging. I'm like, I don't know. Guess we'll, like, it's like anybody else. So you kind of just watch it. You're like, well, I guess we'll see. And we're not seeing it go in. It's like
I mean,
I
even during his and I think that's 100% right. Like I would say even during his greatest seasons, there's going to be a stretch like this, like a 4 game stretch where he scores one
yeah,
goal off a goalie and he doesn't bury his chances. So those first games are always the ones that are most magnified because they're the only ones we have in our back pocket at this second. I'm not willing to say right now that like, oh, okay, he is the
no.
guy from last season. He's not gonna have this bounce back. But again, he hasn't done anything to prove that he will have the bounce back. And I know what you mean. Like when just subjectively, when you're watching, like it does feel different. Like you see him
It,
get the puck and you're like, maybe.
yeah.
And you used to be
Whereas
like, oh, okay.
yeah,
And like
yeah,
that is a very different feeling.
yeah. Like when that 69 goal season, I ended up going to both like 2 games in a row, and he had a hat trick in both games. It was against Philly and Anaheim, like two terrible teams, but like he had like they were just no doubter hat tricks. They're just like, all right, give me the puck. And that was the end of it. It was like he was getting like half looks on goalies and you were just ripping it by him. And he did it all year. So I just happened to go to 2 in a row when they were hat tricks. But, I was at the game on Monday against Detroit. And at one point, he kind of breaks in on like a pretty clean look off the rush. And he tries passing it off the pad to not like a pure pass. Like it wasn't even remotely a shot. Like it was a straight up pass off the pad to Nyes or to try to get Nyes, who was driving the net. And I'm like, are you okay? Cam Talbot is 38 years old and you have a clean look on him. And you're sitting there going, me, best goal scorer since I've entered the league over like, what is it, 9 years? I got to pass it off the pad to Matthew Nyes driving the net. That's a goal, man. That's rip it 5-hole. High glove, something. And then he got a 2-on-1 after that, and he did try going high glove, and he missed. That's, look, guys aren't going to score every single game. We're 4 games
We'll
in.
see.
I know he's got goals. It's not like he's not scoring. I just it would be nice to see him start beating goalies. That's the really all I can say there.
I think you want to see like a 4 game stretch where he scores 7 goals. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like something like that, like a proper heater. And again, you can't demand that. Like I demand your heater from the moment the puck drops in game 1. Doesn't always work like that. It has worked like that for Matthews in the past, but it doesn't always work like that. I don't think there's panic, but like we often have
and
said, whether it's last season, this season, that like the whole enterprise here requires Auston
yeah,
Matthews to be that otherworldly guy. And the evidence has
in
not presented itself yet. I think that's
in
kind of as far as we can go with it.
in Detroit, he had one where Maccelli hit him through the neutral zone, and he walked in and he curled it and he ripped it off the bar like hard. So I mean, you're like 1 inch away from being like, no, like he just absolutely torched Talbot. So I'm mindful of that. But it would be nice to see a few of those actually go in. And it's like, okay, like relax. Like we all know who I am and I'm still that same person. It would be nice to get a few of those. Whereas even though Nylander just like hasn't really strangely been shooting and also hasn't been a goalie, I'm not actually too worried about him because he just 3 straight years of doing it right now. Like to me, he's more of just like it's gonna happen. He also has been I don't know, for at least 3 of the games, been fairly lethargic. So him, I'm like, what? Like, meh. And then I look at Bobby McMann and I'm like, he's been one of their best players for three out of
Looking
the 4 games.
looking
But then
dangerous out there.
the one game he was bad, that whole line was terrible, and he gets demoted down the lineup. And then we're back to Robertson-Domi-McMann. And I honestly thought when that line got put back together, I was like, if they qualified Pontus Holmberg, what are the chances he would already be back on line 2? With like that was my first thought. I was like, if they did it, I like Holmberg. He actually had a nice assist against Tampa. He scored that game too. That like in the past week, or sorry, not against Tampa, against Boston for Tampa. Like he had a nice week, and I'm like, yeah, like he's a good, useful player in the bottom 6. But I'm sitting there going, like, you almost had to take him away just because like it would have went right back to it. He would have reverted right back to old ways, They've already done it with the Domi McMahon Robertson line, and kind of just sitting there going, we know that this line is not a real line. Like it's fine. They scored against Nashville. They're going to be fine against Nashville. They're going to be fine against Detroit. They should be fine against even the Rangers and Seattle coming up, but they're not fine against actual good hockey teams.
No,
And
and
so
I mean, I mentioned the idea of, that confirmation bias and how if you believe a player has these qualities, you're going to kind of see those qualities in them. Like, I think that with Berube and Bobby McMann, there's a little bit of the opposite. Like, I think he's got like a little bit of an anti-McMahon bias. I think he sees a couple bad games, couple mistakes, and I think it might be to some, and this is pop psychology, but I think to some extent it might be that McMahon is the guy who has the tools that he truly covets. Like he's got the size and he's got the speed. And so I think sometimes he maybe expects a bit too much and he wants McMahon to be this player that, like I love Bobby McMahon, but like let's be realistic about what he is. He's a bit of a blunt instrument. He's a guy who's going to shoot off the rush. He's going to use his speed, get the occasional break, do some work on the wall, but he's not like, he's not the most skilled player or the most creative player in history. Like he's a useful guy.
he's all gas, no brakes. He's gonna get the puck, skate fast, and shoot. Like that's it.
Yeah,
But he's gonna
exactly.
get 20 plus goals doing it. And you need
Probably.
guys that do that. He should. What's he at 2 already? So I mean he had 20 last year and he barely scored in the final like month and change. So I mean he should if McMahon plays 75 games, he should hit 20 goals pretty comfortably, I'd imagine. And then you kind of like, yeah, the forwards, we've kind of gone through them. It sucks Lorentz got hurt. I thought he had a nice start to the year. And then the defense kind of is what it is. Like McCabe and Tanev are good. I've been a little bit disappointed in Carlo. I thought he was really good against Montreal in the opener. The Montreal game, I was like that was the best game that he's played as a Leaf. And so I was really encouraged by it. And then since then I've been like, yeah, like it's just been just not impactful enough. He is good on the penalty kill, but just a little bit not enough. You can be a stay-at-home D-man, but like you have to be amazing defensively, and he's only been okay as part of that. I mean, Riley's been good off. Riley's kind of been Riley. He's good offensively. He's had some questionable moments defensively. The icing against Detroit was really bad. Like that should just never
That
happen.
was, yeah, that
It's
was,
awful.
yeah,
Awful. And
not a good
then
moment.
Benoit's been poor, and Benoit seems to just like you talk about the Bobby McMahon blind spot. Simon Benoit, it's like it's unfortunate because I like Benoit. It's not like I enjoy saying it. Like I like that guy. I get why they like him. Like he's fiery. He's got like some passion to him. Like he's willing to sacrifice his body. He'll throw his body around and lay guys out. Although also we should include Benoit in that category of like why didn't you go after Weissblatt? Like how did you
Fair.
not? I just did like you were watching, you were playing in the game, go after him. But all that to say is I like Benoit. Like I see why they do, but like I'm sorry, like it's just like it hasn't been good enough to justify Ekman Larson on the right where he hasn't been good.
Yeah, that pair has gotten a lot of run to prove that it works, and it doesn't really work. And
No,
like most teams' third pair are not fantastic, but when one of the guys on your third pair is someone like Ekman Larson, who again is not an elite defender at this point in his career, but is someone who you're paying a decent amount of money to, who does have some real skill, like you want a third pairing, including Ekman Larson, to be significantly more effective than this group is. And like that at that point, the finger, and I'm not saying Ekman Larson is totally blameless, but like, where's that finger going to get pointed? Like, it's going to get pointed at the other guy, realistically.
and like I don't view Philip Myers as some like savior or anything along those lines, but it's basically just let's see it. Let's get Ekman Larson back on the left side with a proper righty and give it some run. And I thought about Benoit because I joked about Holmberg, but it's bordering to me on the same territory of someone needs to take him away. Like someone above has to say, the coach has the lineup on a nightly basis. I'm not going to mess with that. But, you know, Like this is like Billy Bean. He's not in the lineup anymore.
Yeah,
Actually,
you
he's
can't
never in
put
the
him in
line.
the lineup if he ain't on the roster.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that like the solution shouldn't be to trade him, but but there does have to be some accountability here. Like it hasn't been good enough. And look, he's a good penalty killer, Benoit, and he gives them two left-handed penalty killers so that they don't have to use Ekman Larson there or Riley, obviously. And then when they kill a penalty, they go out with the Riley Ekman Larson pairing. And like I like that sequence of events there. But yeah, it's still not enough for me. I would just rather try Myers on the left side on the PK or Ekman Larson if you had to, rather than what we're watching. I don't know. Maybe I'm biased against it now too. Like it's been a while. Like I've been calling for it towards the end of last season, and good for Benoit. He had some good moments in the playoffs to kind of settle that conversation down. But I'm just like I'm back to watching it, going, come on, like let's be honest here about this. Like everyone has to see this, right? Like this isn't. Am I losing it? Like I'm almost at that point where I'm watching it, going, like, is this just me?
Well, it
But
also like it feels like he was significantly better pre Berube, which is like funny that like he's getting, but like I felt like he was significantly better like two
needs
years
Sheldon
ago.
back. Needs
Yeah,
Sheldon
like
back.
so it's weird that the coach has this attachment to him when he didn't do his best work for him. Um,
It's almost at the point where I'm like, all right, then put him back with McCabe. Put Ekman Larson with Carlo and put Riley. If you really want to keep him in the lineup that badly, then move them all around and make it work. But like this doesn't work. Like I'm sorry. Like I don't see it changing. I don't see this Benoit Ekman Larson pairing becoming good at any point.
no, and I'm not sure I see it changing in terms of them changing it either. Like it
No.
feels like I mean, happy might be an overstatement, but it seems like they're satisfied with where they are. I think that that might be a good place to leave it. We've gone through the forwards, we've gone through the defense. The goaltenders have been kind of shaky, but not necessarily worthy of a greater discussion. I'm sure we're going to circle back on that later. We really appreciate everyone who listens in, even more so if you're leaving ratings or reviews, things like that. And we'll be back with you again soon.